see? Look, ladies and gentlemen, 1 week in Florida, he's a changed man. He's happy. He's smiling. This is what Florida
people.
Huh?
This is what it does to people.
Yeah. This is what it does to people. It puts you in a good mood. Actually, it can put you in a bad mood because now you can really compare and contrast to that place you came from on the West Coast. What's it called?
Yeah.
California?
California.
California. Yeah, exactly. So what are you going to do?
You don't really travel out of California. You escape.
That's what I listen. The other day, I met a guy. His name happens to be Mark. He just came from California. I say, hey, where are you from? He goes, well, because I just moved from, and he corrected himself. I just moved from, well, actually, I just escaped from California.
That's right.
And the funny thing is we lived about a mile apart in California. Yeah, but the same thing I always say, I never met the guy. Yeah. And he said, we actually escaped. And that's what it feels like, Marcelo. Yeah, you know, this is your second trip here to Florida.
It is. No, it does. I mean, it's such a different way of life. I mean, you know I talked about this in the last podcast, just the people, the culture, the sense of pride to be an American is all here. And so, yeah, it's a different way of life aside from the amount of money you save.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
You know, I know last time I was laughing about it because you said, no, don't go to that gas station because that's $2.95. This one over here is $2.85. And I'm going, I'm paying $6 a gallon. What are you talking about? Like this, I could go for the $2.95 and I'd be happy, but
it's true.
But
I remember that actually the other day.
Yeah.
I said, don't turn right. Don't go to that one. Go to this one right here.
That's right.
And you're looking like,
I'll take either one.
Well, I tell you, right, there's no place perfect, but it's pretty damn good here. And there's a lot to have fun with and laugh about. And but of course, there's what it comes down to. This is all serious business we're talking about, and taking care of your family, and like you said, having a place to live where people actually embrace traditional values, and there's a sense of self-responsibility. There really is, and you know, we're so happy to be here. But the talking about escaping California. I was just
and self-responsibility.
Here we go, folks. Like I said, we always bring the receipts. By the way, welcome to your Leo Nation. We hadn't even thrown that in there yet. Having a good time here. And I am the Chief Mark Gary, where we believe in and support the rule of law. And here we go, rule of law. We're going to go back to Marcelo's home state here once again. I know people ask me, "What's California? Listen, I talk about California for the same reason the other Mark that I just met a few days ago, and I and so many others escaped, because it's a state that does not embrace the rule of law, and we see the consequences, folks. It's not a secret. Everybody knows what's going on, and the reason that I go back to California, so to speak, in this podcast so often, is because this is the way it's supposed to be in this country. The founding fathers set it up so we had individual states that engage in individual state experiments. So we can learn from other states what to do, but as important, what not to do. California has become one of those states that's an example of what not to do. So let's dive right into this and give example number, 148 that I've given on this show, but it's so important. So just a little bit of background. Prop 47, California Proposition 47, which was passed about 10 years ago. I remember when it happened. I was a captain with the California Highway Patrol. I was personally and professionally, in other words, in an operational sense, so opposed to this, because what it did is it reduced a number of crimes, including drug possession, simple drug possession, from felonies to misdemeanors. Yeah. And anybody with two brain cells to slap together is thinking this is going to go bad.
And it has.
It's gone rotten.
It has.
So not finally, it's been brewing, but now there looks like there's a serious effort in California by a coalition of business owners, and local DAs across the 58 counties in California to get a measure on the ballot. So this would be grassroots. We get enough signatures to get this ballot on the November ballot to reinstate a lot of what Prop 47 took away and make these crimes felonies again to put people back in prison. So with that said, let me read an article. Let me tell you how screwed up the leadership, the so-called leadership in California is in the state legislature, California. Okay, you have grassroots that want to increase the penalties for people walking into a Walmart and walking out with a big screen TV from misdemeanor to a felony, and drug possession back to felonies. Let me tell you what the California Democrats, the supermajority California legislature of Democrats, is trying to do in light of citizens trying to take the law back, the rule of law back in a legal way. California's Democratic leaders clash with the businesses over curbing retail theft. This is from AP. This is from June 15th. And this article actually I printed out was via LA local ABC News. Sacramento, California. With retail theft increasing, California Democrat leadership is clashing with a coalition of law enforcement and business groups in a fierce political fight over how to crack down on the problem. State lawmakers are trying to preserve progressive policies and stay away from putting more people behind bars. I got it right here. There's so much in this article that we could talk about all day long. We'll try to keep it fairly streamlined. But you think about something. This line here about a political fight over how to crack down on the problem. Now, what's the problem, Marcelo? We're talking about retail theft, organized retail theft, drug possession.
Yeah.
Again, we know you're still in the business.
Yeah.
You deal with this crap all the time.
Yeah, and so there's a big difference in what we used to do before 2014. Didn't matter the number, the price, I should say. It didn't matter if it was over $950 or under. If you stole a pair of pants and a T-shirt, you were taken to the station and processed. And the hope was to deter you from doing that ever again. So you go through the process in hopes that, you never want to go through that again. And hopefully that fixes the problem. But you were still processed. Like any other crime, you were processed. Mm-hmm. And it worked, folks. It worked. People didn't do it. They didn't do it
not like they do now. Right.
As much.
Right.
Now you've got 4 or 5 people coming in and stealing thousands of dollars all in one shot.
Right.
And this article says it.
Says it right here. And what I was talking about here, I'm glad you articulated that so well to paint a picture. Again, no thing and no place is perfect, but it was much better prior to Prop 47. Absolutely. The point is that line I read there, a political fight over how to crack down on the problem. The problem that Marcelo just so well articulated, that we have people now that are not fearful of any consequences. Right. The problem came about as a result of the passage of Proposition 47 that the left wing in California, which is the majority in California, created. What's the analogy? We're hearing about, the border's broken and we're going to now President Biden is finally signing the law or whatever, executive order they said he couldn't do. And now he's going to fix the problem. Fix what problem? The problem that you caused by reversing the previous executive orders. This is analogous. This is a problem caused by left-wing policies in California. And now the California legislature saying we need to fix the problem. Ladies and gentlemen, I say it all the time, these people suffer from, it's a psychosis, it's schizophrenia. Again, it's the analogy. They set the fire, they're the arsonists, and they say, hey, we got to come and put this fire out now. It never ends. State lawmakers are trying to preserve progressive policies that will keep people out of prison, right? Preserve the progressive policies. The 2 most likely paths under consideration this year are a ballot initiative to create harsher penalties for repeat offenders and a legislative package aimed at making it easier to go after professional crime rings. Now, this is funny here. The professional crime rings. And there's no doubt the professional crime rings are involved in this. Listen, California Highway Patrol, my former organization I was a part of for 30 years, They actually head up the organized retail theft task force in California and work with agencies throughout the state. And a big part of this are the kingpins, the people pulling the strings behind the scenes, and they're reselling the stuff. It's just like a drug distribution. Did you have the manufacturers, and it goes to a cartel? They send it to mules, they send it to distributors, and everybody's making money. But here's the reality: these types of kingpins, again, like Marcelo said, nothing's absolute. This always existed, but did not exist to the extent they do now until Prop 47 and other propositions and bills that passed in California. In other words, you made the ground fertile for these types of organized crime cartels.
Exactly. I mean, it was the recipe that criminals needed, and our government in California gave it to them. And that's the honest to God truth. That's what they needed. They needed no repercussions for their actions. And that's what Prop 47 did.
That's what Prop 47 did. It created an environment now where you have people that are willing to go into a Walmart or a Best Buy or Bed Bath & Beyond, you name it, whatever it is, and still steal massive amounts of retail merchandise. And of course, they can do this. It's not $950 total ever. In other words, anything under $950 is considered a misdemeanor. And certainly George Gascon, who we'll talk about here shortly, won't prosecute most misdemeanors in LA County anymore. It's just a fact. We're going to talk about this. So what happens is these people the kingpins, the truly organized crime syndicates, they rely on these people now who are completely fearless about going in and stealing this stuff. Well, I was saying a minute ago, you can commit this $949 offense today, tomorrow, the next day, the next day, next day. It's per day. I believe it's per day, it's per incident. But anyway, it's not cumulative, whatever it is. You can over and over and over, and every one is always a misdemeanor that won't be prosecuted. They won't even be arrested for, let alone prosecuted. So these cartels, I use the word cartels, organized crime, they can rely on these massive people who have no fear anymore, who can go out and steal hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars collectively that now can be fenced and can be laundered through these crime rings. So leaders behind the two efforts, actually, I remember I didn't read all this. The two most likely passed considered this year a ballot initiative to create harsher penalties for repeat offenders and a legislative package aimed at making it easier to go after professional crime rings. I did read that.
Yeah.
The crime rings again were enhanced, were grown after Prop 47. Leaders behind the two efforts have accused one another of misleading voters and being unwilling to work towards a compromise. How did we get here? Both sides agree on the need to crack down. No, they don't, by the way. No, they don't. The legislature now is trying to come up with this legislative bill because they want to keep these policies in place. They said it right there. They want to keep people out of prison. So what they want to do is they want to present something to the public. Oh, no, you don't need that ballot initiative. Our bill here is going to really, really crack down on blah, blah, blah. That's crap. And you can read this for yourself, but I'll read some of it to you. Both sides agree on the need to crack down, especially on large-scale thefts in which groups of people brazenly rush into stores and take goods in plain sight. At the center of the escalating political fight is Prop 47, a progressive ballot measure passed by voters in 2014 that reduced certain theft and drug possession offenses from felonies to misdemeanors, in part to mitigate the overcrowding in jails and prison. That includes nonviolent property crimes, such as thefts under $950.
Correct. The odd thing here, and you can in the article is where they compare and you see it. It says that includes nonviolent property crimes, right? But of course, the researchers told lawmakers that there's no evidence linking the proposition to increased violent crimes. What are you comparing apples and oranges? No one talked about that.
Apples and balloons.
Yeah, exactly. Apples and balloons. What are you trying to say? So it's typical to me that they'll go, for argument's sake, to the far left and go, well, we looked at the research. It's like saying, we looked at the research. It has nothing to do with car accidents.
Right.
What does that have to do with anything?
Marcelo, I had made a note to myself, the same place you did.
Yeah.
I think it's ludicrous. They throw words on a piece of paper that have no relationship to reality whatsoever. No logic.
Exactly. But here's a question for all of you, and Mark, I'll let you answer this. Mm-hmm. California Democrat leadership, backed by Governor Gavin Newsom, wants to keep the tough on crime measure off the November ballot. Folks, ask yourself why.
Yeah.
Ask yourself why. Why would you want, and this is the Democrats and your own governor, why would you want to keep a tough on crime measure off the ballot?
Yep. Well, I can answer it. It's because their philosophies now, when I say they, the Democrat Party in California and the Democrat Party nationwide, it's transparent now. These are in effect, as far as what the practical outcome of their policies is, pro-crime. Sorry, I don't know how else to say it. It's when you look at the results of their policies, it increases crime, it increases death, it increases mayhem, it increases, just about every level of crime and type of crime that you can imagine. Newsom does not want to be undermined by the grassroots people in California. By the way, when this early in the article, and it said, I said DAs, and it may be maybe someplace in DAs, but it's almost the same thing when it says law enforcement agencies like California Highway Patrol or San Diego Police Department or Los Angeles Police Department, Oakland PD, they all have representation. They all have legislative representatives that work with the legislature on different bills, things like this, that give input. But where the pressure really comes from are the elected law enforcement officials. And I'm talking about the sheriffs, the various sheriffs that are elected throughout the 58 counties in Los Angeles and California. And the reason is those sheriffs, because they're elected, they, as the head of their respective agencies, can speak freely and they can speak directly to and about the legislature, the governor, because they're elected officials. They're not appointed. They don't work for a city council. They don't work for a mayor. They are the elected officials. So that's where this is coming from, a lot of it, along with DAs, because they're also elected. Not in every county, of course, but in a lot of counties in California. I mean, they're all elected, but this is coming from a lot of counties. But this is exactly why, Marcelo, I'm so glad that you highlighted that as well. He doesn't want that on there because it doesn't want anything to go in effect that he can't take credit for. And he cannot back the ballot measure because it's in opposition to a supermajority legislatures who want a soft on crime bill masquerading as a hard on crime bill. Right. If any of you listening out there, just dig down a little bit. I mean, not a lot. I mean, much as we did today, printing up a couple of articles, it is so easy to see the disgraceful behavior and motives of certain people in certain groups in elective life. It is very, very simple. Why wouldn't you want the toughest penalties within reason for someone walking into a retail store and walking out with a basket of merchandise for which they didn't pay? It's simple, but Newsom, of course, is opposed to it. Now, here's the thing. It says, do the efforts conflict? If voters approve the Tough on Crime ballot initiative, Democratic leaders plan to avoid most measures in their own legislative package, citing potential conflicts. Now, I want you to listen carefully. If the ballot wins, if it passes in November, then the Democrats in the California legislature are basically going to gut their own because they said they don't want to layer. I'll read it here. Lawmakers, Marcelo, why don't you read that? Because I know you highlighted it as well.
Yeah, so very interesting. So
That's the right word. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. So it says here, lawmakers were short on details about how the two paths conflict earlier this week. Later, they said they fear if both efforts succeed, law enforcement would be able to stack penalties, send more people to jail, leading to mass incarceration and overcrowding jails.
Can I editorialize? Okay, go ahead.
No,
you go ahead.
Here's a thought, folks. And I may be speaking only to a few of you, but here's a thought. You don't want to go to jail? Don't commit the crime. Don't be a criminal. You don't have to worry about incarceration. I mean, it's really that simple. So now we're worried about people. We're worried about taking too many people to jail that actually commit crimes.
Period. So the Democrats now are saying, well, just in case this ballot measure passes, we want to make sure that nothing we pass might, by some miracle, actually impose penalties. I mean, as watered down as this bill is, there might be something in there that holds someone accountable. So they want to make sure at all costs they don't add anything that law enforcement could really use in conjunction with this ballot measure, again, to hold people accountable for their own behavior, like you said, Marcel, that they don't have to engage in all this crap. Oh, they're poor. They have to. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, we have all seen, and not just in Los Angeles or San Francisco or Oakland or Sacramento, all over the, not just California, all over the country, in these blue cities, we've seen the mobs, we've seen the 15-year-olds, the 12-year-olds. I've seen it when I was in California, literally walking into a supermarket and watching teenagers just run up right past me with many cases of beer as they could carry. Beer. Now, do these sound like people who are suffering from poverty? So they're going in and they're getting baby formula or diapers or loaves of bread? No. And we know this is the general case across the country where this stuff is happening. This whole thing about keeping poor people out of prison, it is so disgusting. And I'll say this, my dad, who you've heard about before, grew up poor, dirt poor, black in the deep South during the Depression under Jim Crow and never stole a damn thing in his life. Same thing for my mom. Those were poverty and oppressive circumstances. So I just tell you right, I just hit back on that stuff. I just hit back on, I hear this, and it's all smoke and mirrors from the Democrats. It's all smoke and mirrors about this, about keeping people, poor people out of prison, low income people out of prison. It's a lie. You know it. I know it.
It's just an excuse.
It's an excuse.
That's all it is.
And the Dems in California, other places similar to that, know it as well.
I mean, how do you know they're poor? First of all,
well, like I said,
because let's face it, and you know this is what I do. When we arrest someone, we don't say, "What's your income?"
Right. Give me your W-2. Oh, wait a minute.
We don't say, "Hey, what kind of car do you drive?" It doesn't matter.
It
doesn't matter. So
the
it's just, how do they know they're poor? This is just another excuse for them to go, "Oh, look at us, the Democrats. We're worried about the poor folks." That's not even true. These people just, you're creating a generation that I can't afford this, but I'm going to take it anyway. So if I'm in the mood to drive a Ferrari, it's okay for me to go and steal one because, hey, you know what? I'm not as privileged as the person that makes $3 million. I don't know what to tell you, folks. There's some things you just can't have.
Simple as that. Know? So there you have it. The Democrat supermajority legislature in California is trying to pass a bill to push back against a ballot measure that would actually enhance penalties for criminals in California. It's I would say it's unbelievable, but
it's not.
There's just nothing coming out of California and so many other states, by the way, that's not unbelievable anymore. So
this may be unbelievable.
This might be unbelievable. Related. So staying in California, of course, and specifically Los Angeles County, my old stopping grounds, the esteemed, revered DA there, George Gascon. I'm reading an article here. This is from the Center Square. by Kenneth Schrupp. Gascon sits on, listen carefully, 15,000 unfiled cases as robberies skyrocket. Now, we were just talking about retail theft and robberies, which are different, but they're certainly related. It's all the same. It's all, by the way, how much you want to bet the same people who are engaged in organized retail theft or these flash mobs going in are also robbing people on the streets individually? I mean, is this a real stretch? Is this a real stretch of the imagination? Let me read this article. This is from June 12th of this year. As homicides and robberies continue to rise, Los Angeles DA George Gascon has created a backlog of 15,000 unfiled criminal cases, pardon me, leading to concerns that unprosecuted criminals in the zero bail county are able to stay on the streets and keep committing new crimes without any consequences. I'm shocked. Wait a minute now. I just want to back up. So someone who has the mindset to go out and commit endless misdemeanors, felonies, and they are not required to stay in lockup in county jail because Gascon will not impose bail on them. They actually go out and commit more crime, Marcelo. Now, am I getting this right?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy that we have that kind of statistic that a criminal commits more than one crime. That's nuts.
I can't believe it. What's the number? I said this is a general. I say it all the time. It's about 10% of the population commits about 90% of the crime. It can vary from region to region, but generally that's what we're talking about here. So if you kept these 10% that are doing it in prison, we'd have a pretty low crime rate. But George Gascon seems to be hell-bent on doing just the opposite. While LAPD did not respond to a Public Records Act request on updated crime data by the time of publication, as the department adopts a new crime reporting system, LAPD Public Information Officer told the Center Square that there were 438 gunshot victims and homicides are up 11%. Robberies are up 17.6%. Motor vehicle theft up 5.2%. And burglaries up 2.4% year over year for January 1 through June 1st, 2024 compared to 2023. This is under the watch of Gascon and other elected officials. And by the way, and other non-elected officials, I won't name any number of law enforcement agencies whose leaders I have good knowledge of, I think that are partly responsible for this as well. Now, again, even the best chief or whoever else of the agency can arrest people all day long. I get that. But if the DA doesn't prosecute them, that's about all that an agency can do. Yeah. But there are so-called law enforcement leaders in that county, and I'm not just talking about any particular agencies, multiple agencies, who are not even interested in aggressively going after crime. They're not interested in it anymore. And I believe that wholeheartedly. Marcelo, what's your take on that?
Absolutely. I mean, if we go back to 22 years ago when I started in law enforcement, and the way that we approached crime and how important it was for a law enforcement officer to prevent crime before it occurred, it was one of our main objectives, is trying to prevent the crime before it occurred. So you went out there and you did observation arrest. When you saw a guy sitting in a car looking at a closed business, it was odd. And you did a consensual stop to figure out why he's sitting here at 2 a.m. when this business closed at 10 p.m. And so those things are non-existent anymore.
Right.
It's almost impossible because of the numbers of officers we have, for one, but because we're inundated with all this other stuff, all this other paperwork, that officers can't go do their job. And because of it, you have an increased murders in Los Angeles while, and this is per the article, while it's falling in the rest of the country.
Right.
So when you have someone like Gascon that overshadows the rule of law and wants to decrease incarcerations and use, again, lower income as one of his excuses, it's just false, folks. It is. It's false. It's something that I don't know. I wish I can go into Gascon's brain and really know the reason why you want to destroy a community, why you want to destroy a city. But and then I think to myself, good Lord, you destroyed San Francisco,
Right.
and we still voted for you in LA. Twice. I mean,
Or beat a recall. Let's put it that way.
A recall. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what? I don't understand what is going on here.
Well, it's a good point. It's a good point. People ask me all the time, like when I was in law enforcement, hey, geez, Mark, why would somebody commit XYZ crime? Why would they do something so heinous? And as if I had an answer, right? It's like, oh, let me tell you why Charles Manson slaughtered, by the way, untold number of people. We know he got convicted of a handful of murders, but or why this serial killer, or why this person shoots innocent people. I would say, how would I know why they do it? This is the thing. I don't live in the mind of a mass murderer, or by the way, or a bank robber, or things like this. It's very hard because most of us don't live like that. And it's a great point where I have my suspicions. I think they're more than suspicions. I mean, why Gascon operates like this, I think because he, like so many other prosecutors around this country, in blue states, more specifically in blue cities and blue counties, are supported by George Soros, who makes it clear that George Soros, he wants to demolish Western culture, American culture as we know it. I mean, he's unabashed about it. And he financially supports these DAs, and George Gascon is one of them, because he wants to burn things down and rebuild it in a different image. He's very clear about that. So for those of you who vote for George Gascon, know what his motivations are, at least in my opinion, and based on some pretty good evidence, and others like him. And you read part of that, Marcel. By the way, speaking of George Gascon not wanting to put people in jail, I don't even have the article in front of me. I read it this morning. A couple of years ago now, I think there was a homeless person, long story short, who was befriended by a gentleman who had some medical issues, who had a home and a family, and brought this person in, this homeless lady. I think she's now 61 years old. It's in a part of Los Angeles I know pretty well. Leimert Park is where they became acquainted. He brought her in, gave her some shelter at the house, and she kind of on her own moved into the master bedroom, kind of took things over. When it got so bad, I think it was the husband. I know it was the husband, the man who brought her in. I think the wife and another relative. But when she was about ready to be kicked out of the house, she decided to murder all three of them. She shot all three of them. George Gascon, because she's over, I think it's an age limit, like not a limit, but a threshold, I think 50 years old, whatever. She's supposed to go to prison for life. But it looks like George Gascon is trying to keep her to a maximum 20-year sentence. Now, again, she's 61 years old, 81. Will she live that long? Who knows? I don't know. But the point is, there should be no question that a life sentence without parole, just in case she lives to 106 years old, she should be spending the entirety of the rest of her life in prison. But Gascon apparently is going to lobby to, or may not push for a life sentence. This is the kind of madman that we're dealing with here. This person should never see the light of day again. Of course, if it were in the correct state, she would be executed, but not happening there. So gun violence is a huge problem in LA. And not charging gun enhancements and not prosecuting juvenile gun murderers is the wrong policy, said Nathan Hochman, a former federal prosecutor running against Gascon in the November election. He said to the Center Square. Now, previously I supported John McKinney for LADA. He didn't make the cutoff in the what do you call them, primaries or run up to it. Nathan Hochman is now the nominee. I'm fully support Nathan Hochman. I'm going to try to have him on the show. John McKinney and I were talking about it. John McKinney's endorsed Nathan Hochman. If you are in Los Angeles County, if you're a resident there, please, please, please support Nathan Hochman. Vote for Nathan Hochman. I want to give that shout out to him. There is now reportedly a backlog of 15,000 unfiled cases that are gathering dust because prosecuting crime is not a priority to Gascon and Hochman continue. This means thousands of criminals who should be prosecuted are instead on the streets committing new crimes, and we are less safe as a result. I mean, this should not be difficult for anybody to understand. This should be completely non-political.
100%.
It's about the safety of one's community, of one's family, of oneself. That people who commit crimes, regardless of their economic status, the color of their skin, their national origin, who they worship, with whom they sleep, those things should be completely irrelevant as long as the law is being enforced objectively and consistently. Simple as that. People who commit crimes and make society unsafe should pay the penalty. And the most important and immediate way to do that is to be incarcerated and separated from law-abiding civilization until they're either reformed, which unfortunately is not the majority of people, or they're too old to commit more crime, whatever it may be. But this is what we're dealing with. And Nathan Hochman's 100% right. Again, I'm trying to get him on the show. I know he's a very, very busy guy. He's a assistant DA, and he's running for office. So now listen to this. When Gascon first took office in 2020, he instituted a policy of seeking zero sentencing enhancements. An enhancement, Marcel, you can jump in on that if you want to, or I'll take it. Go ahead, either way.
So enhancements are when someone believes that this guy can possibly get out on bail and may flee the country. We drew an enhancement because the crime fit the bill, if for lack of a better word. So if someone used a gun in a robbery, we would try to do an enhancement for using a gun in a violent crime, and so it would just raise the bail so to make it more difficult for that person to get out, or because of his history, get out and continue to commit more crimes. So that's why enhancements were so important. But it's practically impossible.
It's practically impossible. The other part of enhancements is this, ladies and gentlemen, that enhancements are used as leverage for the prosecution. So you can charge somebody with the underlying crime, the enhancement. Marcelo gave a very good example of a firearm used in a violent crime. So when you charge them with an enhancement, what that does is it will, number one, increase the bail, but it also increases the potential length of sentence, the potential penalty for it. So now when you get to either the felony prelim, later arraignment, arraignment, felony prelim, whatever it is, or grand jury, when you're negotiating with the defense for this perpetrator, now you can say, okay, I'll tell you what, if you agree to 6 years in state prison, we'll go ahead and drop the gun enhancement, which would have brought you another 5 years or 10 years. In other words, it gives you more power to keep these people in prison without a lengthy and expensive trial, which could go one way or another. So it's basically a threat. I'll tell you what, if you don't cop the XYZ, we're going to charge with XYZ 1, 2, 3. And this is so it's a tool now that Gascon won't use because he does not want people to be in prison, even for the most egregious crimes, for any longer than absolutely possible. And I gave that example of the homeless person.
Here's another great example of zero bail. I know of an officer, I know him very, very well, wink, wink, who arrested someone for 6 robberies. 6, folks. And he had a zero bail. Zero bail. That officer had to make a phone call, and I forget what entity he had to call. They sent him instructions on how to write a declaration in order for him then to scan it back to them. They give it to a judge, and a judge actually gives you a bail. A judge says, yes, this is good for a bail. So look at all the hoops you had to run through.
6 robberies.
6 robberies. Back in the day, we had a book. You committed a robbery, number 1, 20 grand. If you committed a second one, it's 40.
It's called a bail scale or bail schedule.
Bail schedule.
And we all had them.
Exactly. I didn't have to call anyone. I didn't have to get permission from a judge. It's, hey, you committed 6 robberies. That's $120,000, and that was your bail. It was that simple, folks. But now you have officers that have to make phone calls to write something out, to send it back to that person, for that person to send it to a judge, and for the judge to come back and go, okay, I'll give you a $50,000 bail for this criminal that committed 6 robberies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's real. It happens.
It happens. In this next paragraph here, under Gascon's initiatives in Prop 47, which was passed by California, I said 10 years ago in 2014, made thefts under $950 in resale value and many drug crime misdemeanors. Minors in Los Angeles County can largely shoplift or burglarize without risk of criminal prosecution, a factor that could account for some of the difference between the significant increase in reported robberies, a felony involving threats or use of force, and the only slight increase in reported burglary status misdemeanors may not be likely to be prosecuted. Marcel, you actually talked about this earlier.
Right.
And a total disconnect from real stats to, in other words, when you're not arresting these people, it's almost impossible to develop a criminal history and know what they're into. Why don't you ask yourself this question? Marcel, you gave the example of some guy, some copper who arrested a guy for 6 robberies. Burglars, robberies. 6 robberies. In your own life, your own universe of friends, acquaintances, whatever, how many people do you know that have ever been arrested for a robbery personally? And you might, my brother-in-law's always been a dirtbag or whatever.
No one really.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody has one in the family. Yeah. But ask yourself, how many people you know? Do you know more than one? Do you know more than 2 personally? Not you heard of, not your friend's friend, but in your life, in your own circle, how many people do you know who've been arrested for burglary or robbery or assault or any number of crimes? And then juxtapose that to this person that Marcel was referring to, who was arrested for 6 robberies. 6. Yep. It goes to my point that a very, very small percentage of the population commit most of the crime, because most of us don't know personally. Well, Marcel and I do, because I worked in the industry, so we're the first people that arrested them. But you know what I'm talking about. It's very, very rare. And Gascon is the guy behind trying to keep these people out of prison. By the way, do you think that robberies, the example Marcel gave, do you really think that robberies are the only crime that particular individual is involved in? Really? Do you think so? You know the answer to it. It's a rhetorical question. When I finish up on this one, going to move to our last our topic. There's so much there with Gascon. Now, this is interesting because this kind of ties in to California. Maybe not in it's an interesting way. And I just saw this morning, found it this morning, and I thought this would be an interesting way to finish up on the show today. Let me read a headline. Horrible, horrible story. Just tragic is not the right word. It's evil when someone intentionally kills somebody, unlike a car accident, which is that's a tragedy. But when you do what this person did, it's an act of evil. Suspect arrested in 2023, murder of mother of 5 while hiking in Maryland. This is from ABC News. DNA evidence was key in finding Rachel Moore's alleged killer, police said. And this is from June 15th, very recent. After 10 months of searching the country, investigators said they arrested the suspect on Friday who they say allegedly murdered Rachel Morin while she was hiking through a Maryland trail last summer. Hartford County Sheriff Jeffrey Gawler, or Gaylor, it's probably Gawler, told reporters Saturday that through DNA evidence and tracking, local police and the FBI arrested Victor Antonio Marinas Hernandez in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in connection with the 2023 killing. Morin, 37, a mother of 5, was found dead on the Ma and Pa Heritage Trail on August 6, 2023, a day after her boyfriend reported her missing after she didn't return from a hike. Gawler said that his team, the FBI, and the community worked relentlessly to bring justice to Morin and the family. Our deputies and partners have worked this case with persistence and passion every day, he said. Here we go. Our deputies, Martinez Hernandez, 23, will be charged with first-degree murder and first-degree rape when he is extradited to Maryland, Gawler said. Investigators believe Morin was attacked on the trail and pulled through a wooded area before being killed in a drainage culvert that runs along the trail, the sheriff's office previously said. DNA evidence was recovered. Stay with me, folks. This is the last page here. DNA evidence was recovered at the crime scene shortly after Morin's body was found linked to a 2023 home invasion in Los Angeles, where a suspect's DNA had been found. Get this. A 9-year-old girl was assaulted in the LA case, according to the sheriff. Now, I'm going to stop there. There's just a few more lines I want to talk about left in this article here. The only reason that this guy, at least at this point, maybe he would have been identified later on, but the only reason that this monster, this evil monster, was apprehended is because obviously he left DNA evidence at the scene of the rape and murder of this 37-year-old mother of 5 in Maryland in 2023. So he left behind his DNA there. So now, just because law enforcement finds DNA at a scene, it doesn't mean that they can match it to a particular person unless a person's actually in a system somewhere, in a database, your DNA. And there's lots to talk about that, about privacy rights and things like this. If you're using some of these DNA tracking, heritage things I've used before, whether your DNA can be subpoenaed and things like that. That's a topic for a different show. But right now, the only reason that his DNA was in any database is because what did he do? Subsequent to the murder in Maryland, he's all over the place. He winds up in Los Angeles. He commits a home invasion. Right. And he assaults. Now, they just said assault. I don't know if it was sexual assault, but he assaults a 9-year-old girl and leaves DNA there. So the police department, it says Los Angeles. I'm assuming they actually mean LA City proper. It could be in Los Angeles County. I'm not sure what agency, but the investigating agency collect that evidence. It goes in the database, and then bingo, it pops up. Now, you can watch the video on this, and I saw they have him exiting his home. It's a Ring camera or whatever. And slowly but surely, they were able to identify him. They still didn't know the name. They didn't know, either agency didn't know who the suspect was. But now they had DNA, and they had actually a visual evidence of him. Let me move on to this. Martinez Hernandez allegedly, I love this allegedly. Thank you, ABC. Like I said, not always, I try to bring you these knucklehead platforms like ABC and MSNBC and CNN, things like this, allegedly. We have, I'll finish this. It just burns me up. Martinez Hernandez allegedly entered the U.S. illegally last year from El Salvador, where he was wanted for murdering a woman, according to the sheriff and the FBI. We know for a fact that he entered the country illegally, ladies and gentlemen, because he's not a U.S. citizen. What is it? He allegedly. No, his clone is still in El Salvador, but then they put his other clone on a transporter like in Star Trek, and he popped up in Maryland. What do you mean allegedly? These people have no shame. They can't wring out the political correctness in their reporting. Just say, this guy who's here illegally from El Salvador. Let me me ask you a question. I'm sorry I'm getting on a tangent, folks, but this is what I deal with all the time when I'm reading these articles prepared for the show. What if I snuck into Canada tomorrow? Do you think the arresting agency up there would say, oh, Mark Garrett is allegedly here illegally? They'd know you're here illegally. Why do we have to go off on these ridiculous political CYA tangents with this crap? I know I'm getting off on a tangent. I've said it probably 3 times in the last minute, but it angers me so much.
Yeah.
Just say this, and you can just say this, hey, this alleged murderer. Okay, he's not been convicted yet. Still ridiculous, but I can buy that. But we know for a fact he's here illegally.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's from El Salvador. Now, I read some more story in this guy, Marcelo. I'll shut up for a minute so you can take a shot at this. But we know that he actually murdered another woman in El Salvador before coming to America. Why did he come to the United States? He was fleeing the authorities in El Salvador. So I read extensively on this before he got on today to give you the backstory. So he was fleeing prosecution in his home country. He tried to come in here illegally. Thank God they turned him around, sent him back, and then he came in illegally later on, goes to Maryland, kills this poor woman, goes to California. And by the way, we only know what we know. We have no idea how many other crimes this monster may have committed. I'm going to stop right there for a little bit. Go ahead.
Oh, it's true. And, and people were so angry at President Trump when he said they're not bringing their best over. They're bringing criminals and murderers, and people were in an uproar. Oh, my God, how could you say that? Well, folks, it's the truth. I mean, Mark, you covered most of this, if not all of it. But it just goes back to, it goes back to your vote matters. Okay, your votes matter. We have a current president right now that is soft on crime. He's soft on the border. And because of that, we've got murderers coming into our country. Okay, not committing one murder, but multiple murders. And if you don't think that this is going to continue, this man could possibly have another 4 years in office. That's scary, folks. I mean, he's just about to write an executive order saying we're going to allow 2,500 people a day. Okay, which is, by the way, it's a federal offense to cross the border. So it basically says we're going to turn our heads for 2,500 people that are violating federal law. And then after 2,500, that's it. Now we're arresting them. It's ludicrous. I mean, folks, this executive order, he's basically saying we're going to allow 2,500 people to commit a federal crime. Knowingly. But after 2,500, now we're going to lay down the law. It's stupidity. So, I mean, it comes down to just understanding what's going on in this country. I mean, and especially in California, God help them. Really, it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And we keep voting the same people in. You keep voting these people that do not have your best interest at heart, that don't care about your community. They don't care about the safety of your children, of your parents, of your wife, of your husband. They don't care. They just don't. And it's, we on November 5th have to make that change. We have to. For our sake, we have to do that.
Yeah, 100% right. 100% right. And I've said it before on the show, Marcelo, I have my brother Danny on here. We talked about this a number of times. And I'm going to keep talking about it. I'm going to keep talking about the border. I'm going to keep talking about the rule of law. That is the motto of the show, because without the rule of law, we simply don't have a society. Look, crime does not care who the victim is. I want you to think about that. Crime does not care. Criminals don't care. Criminals do not care. And we had the actor in downtown Los Angeles who went back to his car after an event or whatever, and a handful of people were cutting off his catalytic converter from his car. He approached them. They shot and killed him. Now,
catalytic converter.
Catalytic converter. These are real people I saw his mom on television. I'm a parent. You're a parent. And all you parents out there, we all know, we wake up with nightmares sometimes having these things about something happening to our child. I wish I didn't, but we do. And I look at these people, these are real people, these are real parents. I saw the mom of the woman who was raped and murdered in Maryland we've talked about. I saw her on television just recently when they captured this animal who killed her poor daughter. These have real consequences. And again, it should not be political. I don't want it to be political. My God, if I could have someone in the California governor or the current president talk like Bill Clinton did in 1994 about crime, if I could have the same policies that he was pushing, not all of them, I fully admit there are a lot I disagreed with, but so many of them now would be considered right-wing, reactionary, oppressive, racist, things like this. He wasn't, and neither of those policies. Bill Clinton wasn't racist, I don't think. He just wanted rule of law. But he would be considered now, if he actually supported the same policies, a whack job by people on the left. And we need to get back to enforcing the rule of law. If you commit the crime, you said it earlier, you do the time. I know it sounds like a cliche, but it's so true. It's so true. We're not seeing that in so many of our certain states and specifically certain cities. So I hope that turns around. I want to say thanks for watching. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to crunch time here in November, and the rule of law starts at the top. That's where the tone is set. And you know how I feel about this election coming up. We know how Marcelo feels about the election coming up. And platforms like this, hopefully we can bring some people over that side of rule of law, put aside the other issues. I get that, but there are not many more things more important than our national security and our internal security in our community. So with that said, God bless you all. Keep the faith. Share this platform. Please, please, please send the link. Make a phone call. I said, share, like, comment, whatever you can do. We got to keep the word out there, and we got to look out for our families, our communities, and our country. God bless you all. Thanks for joining us at your Leo Nation. Mumbling again. And Marcelo Arrue, thank you not only for being on the show twice in the last week, but it's been my pleasure to have you and your wonderful family out here. And I will be sending you a bill for the accommodations. I think you understood that before you came out, right? Well, I'm from California, so I'm still in that mindset that someone's got to pay me something.
Right, but because I'm California, I don't pay bills.
Oh, that's right. So I guess we're even. Thanks, my friend. God bless you guys. Take care.